welcome to another episode of Rise and Play, and we are continuing on our exciting special series about India, gaming in India. And here today is even a more special one because it's not exactly just pure gaming, but education. And today I'm super excited to have Rishi representing Supernova, an AI tutor for every child. Now, so we'll talk more about Supernova, who is Supernova, what is Supernova. But with Richie, we met Blimikai on the portfolio day, and that's how I discovered about Supernova. And I even tried and saw some videos of, I don't know if I should say app, game, application, education. And
Yeah,
I was really excited to have you on board to share more of the story, the journey of Supernova. And before we start, I just wanted to give a context for the listener. What is a Supernova? As an AI tutor, is where games and in a broader sense meets education and technology. And what I found
right.
very fascinating about Supernova was to see that teacher completely generated, empowered by AI, and the conversation with children, if I'm correct, from 4 to 12 years old, all across India, learning
Yeah,
English through
correct.
Supernova. Yeah.
Right.
So Rishi is the CEO and co-founder of Supernova, founded roughly more than 2 years ago. And I'm here today to go through your journey, how you started. So
Sure.
welcome, Rishi, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, very happy to be here.
So let's begin maybe before Supernova, and I'll make sure to link to the show notes some video and trailer because I think it's very self-explanatory what you're doing with Supernova.
Sure.
What have you done before? What is your background? Where was it, in the games, in business, in technology, that led you to found Supernova?
So I come from this small town called Dindigul, right? It's in Tamil Nadu, which is one of the 29 states of India, right? So I come from Dindigul. It's a small town, and a small town life and middle class family. And for a long time, I went to the same school, got on the same bus, went to my school for almost 12 years, right? Same school in my town. And that was until class 10. And I was always, a kid who was able to do well in exams, which anything related to chess, those kind of things, anything that was very intellectual, I was able to perform well. So, right after 10th, my dad found this ad for this thing called IIT JE Coaching Center. So, just to give you some context, IIT is the best engineering college of the country. It's like the Stanfords, etc. There are some tier one
Mm.
colleges that are sought after. India's one is IIT, and about 1.5 million kids write an examination to enter into IIT, and 10,000 of them, less than that,
Mm.
get to go into an IIT. So you can see, it's a pretty hard thing to do, right? But somewhere my father believed I could do it, and that's the thing about India and education, right? So see, my family, we bought our first car. I think I bought our first car. So you can imagine, like, just good. We never had problems with food or anything of that sort. At the same time, we couldn't spend lavishly, right? And my dad was very much about what is essential and what is just, things that you can live without, very grounded kind of a person. So most of the time, if I wanted a new shirt or I wanted to go somewhere on a trip, even those things he would think twice before spending. A lot of times he'll advise me to, stay within your means, etc. But when it comes to education, he never holds back. So when we saw this IIT thing, obviously it was going to be a game changer if I was able to really make it, because you can understand, right? Like, top engineer of the country, if you can get there, amazing. So my dad took a risk, and it costs a lot to prepare for these entrance examinations. Somehow he took a loan, etc., and put me in this school that was good at getting people through IIT examinations. So then I went to Chennai, and then my whole life changed because suddenly I'm living in a metro. Chennai is one of the six, one of the top cities of India, and
Mm.
everything is different. There are malls, life is just faster, and people are just a lot more ambitious, always trying to do stuff. It's always busy, that kind of a place. So it's a very different life. And then there I was lucky enough to get into IIT. So that again changed my life quite a bit, because I was able to achieve this thing that was supposed to be a dream, right? I used to look at all people that got into IIT and be like, oh man, it'll be nice if I can get there. And I got in, right? And there you're surrounded by ambitious individuals, right? Everybody is like IIT. Just to give you some context, Sundar Pichai of Google is from an IIT. right? So a lot of people come from IITs, do very well, and typically you're surrounded by very ambitious people. So that, and you are the best engineer, one of the best engineers of the country, right? At least you tend to believe that once you get there. So I start coding, etc. And that's when I start dabbling with startups, building things, putting out in the market, right? And so I since then I've been building products for various companies. After college, I built this thing called Myra Medicine along with Anirudh. Built it. I took care of product data science there. It was a hyperlocal delivery startup. We scaled it to $15 million, sold it to another company named Medlife, spent a bunch of time there. And in the last, I finished my college in 2016. By 21, I had the fortune to build for millions of people, right? And by this time, I understand how to build product, what is technology, how do you know what is an MVP, how do you trade, things like that, right? And then when Myra journey came to an end, I could basically wanted to see what I wanted to do with all of these skill sets. And for me, I went back to my roots. What made me who I am is education, as you can see, that whole IIT thing, right? So I decided that there was a lot of problems to be solved in education, and that's how we got it started here.
First of all, it's very inspiring, and I can relate a lot to it. I'm coming from not a privileged background, also immigrants, so a lot of
Sure.
building and access to certain layers of society you had, but then you decided still to come back to some roots and serve this. And
Exactly.
before we get into the start of Supernova, and this is coming from my observation also with quite many very intelligent people, entrepreneurs, and there's always the appetite to do more, bigger, stronger. It's almost a pursuit for status, wealth, and you could
Yes.
have continued on that ride, like be the elite of the country and build, I don't know, the big unicorn of India, whatever it is, in the tech, especially like Google and such. But you decided anyway, introspect, go back to your roots. How could I use my skill to do something meaningful for me that means something to me and at scale with impact? What was the process for you? I don't know if there's some events that happen or it's by nature you are someone still connected to your roots. What differed you from maybe other entrepreneurs that I've seen would go just forward and be bigger, chase this even more?
So I think I'm not sure if I've gotten out of that loop yet, because I think even in Supernova, the dream is to make it big, right?
Yeah.
Someday, I know India has 250 million kids, right? About 300 million kids actually, right? So you can imagine, if you're building for India education and if you succeed, it's going to be a legacy, huge thing. So I still think I am continuing on that dream of doing big things. Now, having said that, I had some criterias. It was not really, first of all, it was not like you asked me whether I'm that kind of a person. Actually, I think I was an entrepreneurial person for sure, doing things, taking risks, etc. But when I got into a job, I should admit that I did get into a very comfortable zone where there's not a lot of uncertainty. Everything is just falling in place. You're getting money in the bank every month. So, and it was nice, but somewhere I felt that while it was nice and comfortable and all, somewhere I felt the longing for doing something that was meaningful, right? Something that I could. I didn't take. It didn't. I couldn't be satisfied with a job where I know I had a small part of a funnel. I could improve it over 6 months. Somewhere it didn't feel meaningful to me. So there was always this like maybe I should be doing something on my own, right? And then at some point I decided, hey, if I don't do it now, it's probably going to get harder. So what do I really want to do next 3 years? No matter what, 3 4 years, let me try this at least. And if I'm able to, let's say I don't go anywhere in 3 4 years, then maybe I'll think about giving up. But until then, I'm going to commit to this journey and pick up something that matters, and hopefully I'll figure things out on the way. That's how this thing started from an ambition standpoint. Now, coming to education, now once I decided to do something meaningful, see, we've done e-commerce before, and obviously no disrespect to e-commerce, but for me personally, I couldn't see how I was going to change the world if I got somebody a packet of chips at 10 minutes instead of a day, right? I couldn't see it. Like, I felt with all of this technology, if you can, for me, I search for things that are long term hard problems to be solved. And education is very much broken even today, right? There's so many problems. I think we can go on and on about it in the podcast. So I felt there was an opportunity to do something that was going to be a lifetime of legacy work that you can be proud of there. So, and it is a place where, let's say I go tell my parents I'm a teacher, I'm 30 kids, and maybe I'm making like maybe like $1,000 a month or something like that. They'll still be super happy with it. So it's one of those industries where if things don't work out, I could still derive a lot of meaning, right? And that is super
Mm.
important, because in startups things don't always work out. So you need something else apart from money, etc., to keep you going. So because of those bunch of factors, I decided I can't be this happy. Worst case, I become a teacher who teaches maybe like 50 kids. That's still something worthwhile doing. But I mean, thankfully, that's not what it became. Today is much bigger than that. But yeah, that's how I got started here, right? So
It's
yeah,
beautiful, and I can see the connection. Although, like in your own words, like you're still chasing something big, ambitious, but you combine it with really a personal driver of yours that is also very connected to your personal story with
yeah,
education. And maybe we get into that now. That as you started Supernova, what were the problems, the obstacles you saw with first education in general? I know it's broken in, it's not only the places like structural, but the way of learning and at scale. And I
yeah,
find it beautiful the example when you say teaching a class of 50 and it would still be meaningful. Here,
yeah,
if you have the opportunity to do it on 250 million kids, why
yeah,
not trying first there and then,
yeah,
go down if adjust, but aiming high
yeah.
first. So I totally understand and love, the all the foundation that made you start Supernova. So let's begin with the foundation of Supernova. You start, I guess also you started with other people. And what was the thesis for you to start Supernova, of what you wanted to solve in education in general, or even education in India? If you could give more context about it.
It's a very nuanced thing, and obviously we pivoted and evolved quite a bit. So when I look back, a bunch of things have sort of merged, and not a clear distinction between where it started and how it evolved.
Mm-hmm.
But I can give you broad things that I was specifically interested in when I started, and then I got my co-founders and it started evolving. So see, the number one thing is India has 275 million school going children, right? Maybe it's higher, quoting the latest available official data point. Now, out of this, if you really think about how many do not have access to a good quality learning environment, it's almost 220, 230 million. About 5-10% of people, you can get into the details depending on the subject, etc., but I'm not off by too much. Maybe like 5-10% is what I'm off by. So you have the world's biggest student population, and the quality of education for them is poor, starting from poor infrastructure, poor student to teacher ratio, poor teacher quality. All of these are well documented, right? So massive problems for sure, right? And today with AI, etc., you can literally build an AI tutor for every single child. And even for a high per capita income country like US, it's pretty well understood in education that if everybody has a tutor, the potential that could be realized is just tremendous, right? Like, for example, do you know this Bloom's 2 sigma study?
No.
So in 1980s, there was an experiment conducted where 30 students were taken, and then they would go into a 1:30 kind of a teaching mode, the standard classroom setup.
Mm.
And then another set of students each got a tutor. And both of these groups, one is control, another is you are experimenting, right? You are basically trying to see what are their scores in an exam. And what they observed is the average person in the class where everybody got a teacher performed as good as the topper in the other class. Below average student is performing like the 80th percentile student, like somebody who you would consider as a failure in a traditional classroom is performing like the 80th percentile student in the traditional classroom, is what is happening here. You understand what I'm saying, right? So there's a 2 sigma deviation, and that much potential we are losing on every single child, right? Even in a developed country like US, where they are spending about $13,000, $14,000 on every single
Mm.
child per year, right? For India, that potential is probably a lot more. So these are children whose potential is just not being realized. They're growing up to be a lot less than what they could be. And you're talking about a scale of 200 million. So first of all, in terms of impact and value to be created, there is zero doubts that if there is, right? So there's a huge problem to be solved. That is number one. The number two thing about education and sometimes healthcare, etc., is it's one of those things where being a human in some ways is a flaw, right? Like, basically all of us, this quote, you know everyone wants to go to heaven but nobody wants to die. This quote. It's one of those things, like it's because it's basically what it means is all of us want to be fit, nobody wants to go to gym. All of us want to be learned, nobody wants to study, right? So when it comes to education, we are fighting against ourselves in some way, where it's very hard for people to go through these learning journeys, and it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe if you apply a pure product gaming kind of a thinking, we don't build a game, and if the user hates it, we don't call the user demotivated, right? Like we won't
No.
do we say that, like imagine a game developer saying the user is not motivated to play my game, right? That is what a classroom is saying. But like if you are sleeping in a classroom, whose problem is it? According to the classroom, it is the student's problem. It is not that the class was boring, it is that the student was not motivated, right? If
Mm,
you attend class for 6 months and you flunk, you are not capable. It's not that the 6 month program failed, it's that you
yeah.
failed in that 6 month program. So it's a very, education is one of those industries like that, which is super. If you start to think of it as like user, product, gaming, that kind of a lens, it's very odd. It's like every problem you put it back on the user. Hey, you are not motivated, you are not capable, you are too bored, right? So, and there is zero effort on our end to be like, maybe I can teach this lesson in a lot less boring way, right? So again, from there we felt, I imagine a future where somehow, have you played laser tag?
No.
Laser tag or paintball.
Yeah. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do you, at the end of the session, do you realize you're gasping for breath? You've really exercised and all, but you didn't even feel it while doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
see that maybe in the ultra long term, your exercise won't feel like a chore. Your education won't feel like a chore. Education not feeling like a chore, you don't even have to search elsewhere. Right now, you and me, we are doing this podcast. I'm pretty sure you're learning a lot on the job, but it doesn't even feel like effort because because on the job, it's just you're passionate about it, and it just happens as a byproduct. So I think
Mm.
that kind of education can be a lot more compelling, and it can be appealing to the user. So these two thoughts, a huge impact to be made, hundreds of millions of students, and fundamental change is required here. And something like, in the last few months, AI has also happened. Now it's crystal clear for us, if you put all of these things together, looking at something massively game changing here, and lots of value to be built for hundreds of millions of people. So that's the kind of thing that we came in with.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense in numbers, and also I could see also for a development of a society, it starts with education because
Yeah,
those children that have access to education, like also
yeah,
you, but it took a lot of effort from your parents and investment. It's not of privilege that all kids can have, and then you could
yeah,
build bigger things that have an impact. It's not the
yeah,
access of the story of every kid, and so here you also offering opportunity for even a country who knows if everybody can develop through English and other materials and be in a
yeah.
place that
Tomorrow,
they
math,
can.
science, everything.
Yeah,
Yeah. Why
yeah,
can't you learn math
totally.
from an AI tutor? Why should you not realize your potential because you come from a particular kind of socioeconomic background? It was
Yes.
maybe not possible to solve this today. That's not the case. We can make this happen, and there's zero reasons for us to hold back. We should make it happen so that every children can realize their potential, right? So yeah, agree
Yeah.
with you. Yeah,
Yeah, and let's get into then the application of it, which is what we call edtech. Because here I can definitely see, okay, there's the mission, the impact, the scale, and you couldn't
yeah,
do it before. And here you have technology with all the learnings, the skills you had in e-commerce that could be applicable in so many other areas. We see a bit in health as well.
yeah,
So you at the core, and what I've seen of the product today, maybe it didn't start this way, you use AI at the very core of how you build the product. Could you share
yeah.
a bit about more about the journey of using AI? Because I think it's so new that people are experimenting how they could use it, and I never saw the potential of it as a conversational tool, and that's how I saw it through Supernova. So could you share more
Yes.
context and a journey around the AI for Supernova?
Yeah, sure. So, see, like I said, I come from a very strong engineering background, right? So, in some ways, I'm a nerd like that, like good at math, good at data science, used to do data science for years now, right? So, very naturally, initially, we looked at AI systems for accelerating content creation, right? Initially, it was doing very small incremental things like it'll generate questions. It may generate questions with your name and your surrounding so that it feels personal to you. It'll be like, Sophie went to the market, like that kind of a question will come to you.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of very small incremental things, right? And while doing this, we got, this is when, all of us are, I'm pretty sure, like blown away by GPT now, right? But GPT, I think what we really took off at 3.5 when chat GPT came, right? But before that, long before that, GPT had versions which we were using, which were not so good. It was kind of dumber, significantly dumber compared to the current models, and it didn't have a chat interface kind of a thing. It used to do things like completions, like you could give it a paragraph and it'll complete, or you could write the beginning of a question and it'll complete, or you can say write 10 questions and it'll complete that. The kind of a very small things it used to do, and not very perfect, right? But still useful. So that's how we were dabbling with it. And in between, once in a while, I'll try to build, there's this vision of maybe this can talk, or maybe it can like teach you math. So we had to try to build prototypes around it, but it was always falling short. It felt like maybe a few more years will be there. Until then, let's see where it goes, right? And then around November, December, when chat GPT came, that time, that's when 3.5 came. It was a huge thing, right? And by this time, our prototypes are starting to work. Like what we thought was 5-10 years away are suddenly like we're prototyping and it's starting to work, right? And I think March, when GPT-4 came out, it was better than anything that I could have experienced. Like I was thinking these AI systems will get to 80% of a human. Today I can confidently say our AI tutor for English is better than most human teachers that you can find, like the 99 percentile human teacher when it comes to its knowledge, its patience and a bunch of other things. Obviously humans have their advantages, but that happened in March. And by this time we had already, we are interacting with kids. We went to, so I lived in Bangalore right now. So I moved to second tier, third tier towns. I lived there in second tier, third tier towns. All me and a bunch of my teammates would do is go meet kids in these places, understand what are they doing. And for us, it was not clear. Okay, the technology is good, but the kid really use it, and what do you do to make it usable to accelerate that product development? I went and lived with these kids. Every day I'll come back at in the mornings. We'll have time, right, where we'll build a new prototype, a new learning experience. Afternoons, evening, we'll go experiment. Then we'll have a bunch of learnings. Oh my god, this is broken, this sucks, this is boring, right? And then you'll come back again, you do this, and then when you keep doing it, suddenly you're like, hey man, this thing is actually starting to work. These kids are interacting, they're learning, they're having fun. I see something here, right? And then so quickly by April, we had, by this time we had done this enough that we had the first few months of content ready, right? Maybe like first a couple of months of content ready enough to launch an MVP. So we launched. Today, from April to now, we are sitting in November. We're doing, we are doing about 600K of revenue, a very profitable cash flow positive kind of revenues, and we are going to growing at 30% month on month, headed towards about 5 million in a year, right?
Wow.
So it's briefly the journey. Yeah.
Wow, that's super inspiring. And I think here a turning point was a momentum where technology and AI, the iteration of ChatGPT, that allowed you to really turn around the product, because from exactly the superficial improvement that you scale content to really at the core of the product, which I've seen, and
Yeah,
I've never
exactly.
seen something like this.
Yeah.
Um, and another element is also building with your audience, which is, I've worked also on a few educational products. We discussed about it, and I saw the main barrier. You have two stakeholders. You have the children and you have the
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
And here you're testing also directly with the children, and you have access to test and iterate the product. Could you share
Yeah.
more about that part on, because you also mentioned as you started to make revenue, so here we get more also into the business model, because
Yeah.
this is one of the barriers of educational products. How much have you
Yeah.
involved the parents in the process, and now how do you have access to schools and kids? Do you work with schools,
No,
and
we
how do
work with
you,
schools
yeah.
more like, oh, sorry, please complete your question. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, where do you find your playtester children on a daily basis when you were building the product and iterating?
So, okay, so like you said, there are two stakeholders here. One is the parent, one is the child, right? So that's a long journey. So the thing that I described so far, what is the ambition, how does this tech enable this experience, etc. That's more about the child, the core user of the product, right? That's me wearing my product hat. Now, if I have to wear my business hat and say, how do I really make money out of this? That's a whole other problem to solve, because. mm I'll take you through that, but that's a whole other problem to solve, because the parent thinks very differently compared to the child. They both care about very different things, right? So that is one part of the journey that we had to crack. And playtesters is something that's where schools come into play. So we are not distributing via schools. There we see it to be not such a great strategy. Maybe someone else can make it work, but we like being B2C, direct consumer. We want to be a brand that consumers
Mm.
directly like, yeah, I love Supernova. That's the kind of thing that we want, right? That's what we think is gives you long term staying power, right? So So for playtesting, that schools are very cooperative because, like I said, I come from this IIT, which is good because a lot of people look up to IITians as the pinnacle of academics here. Now, are they right about it? That I don't know, but does this work for you? Yes, like definitely. So when you go tell these parents, hey, I'm from an IIT, I'm trying to solve this problem for children, or go to schools and say, I'm trying to do this and I'm building this new AI thing. You don't have to pay me anything. You just have to let me in your classroom for an hour and I will make sure it's worth your while. Your kids will like it. I will teach them something new. They're like, okay, maybe this, okay, saying IIT and all, okay, fine, I'll give it a shot. And when we go to the classrooms, we'll make it fun that the kids only like when you come back, sir, etc. And so we get a buy-in like that. And then now we have access to lots of schools where if you want to do playtesting, they're more than happy to welcome us and do, okay, I'll free up a class for you. Please come and interact with the kids, right? So that's how playtesting worked. Now, at the same time, what happened is a bunch of these schools found us to be very missionary. So when we told them you don't have to pay anything, and Indian schools are also like you can't blame them; they're struggling to make money. So if you try to do B2B with them, it's hard, okay? But they don't mind helping you if you're trying to do something noble, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they said, I can't buy this, but I see you're trying to do something here good for the kids. So I can call parents teacher meeting where you can interact with the parents, right? And so that was again when we went to these tier 2 tier 3 towns, we could see firsthand who was going to buy our product, like what are these people like, what are their apprehensions, do they like this, do they understand this AI technology, etc., right? So we are getting a lot of insights even on the selling side, and I got my first few users, paying users, like that. I'll go to these meetings, I'll talk to a lot of parents, some people resonate with me and they'll say, okay, I know you've not perfected this, but you seem to be caring about this, so it's okay, take my money and help my kid, right? So that's how I got my first set of kids. And from there, today we've figured out distribution. So I'll tell you what all we've learned, right? The first thing that we learned is, see, at least the parent that we're going after is not this affluent parent. So I'll tell you why that matters. If you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You know that, right? So
Yep.
you're first starting with basics, then slowly you're moving up to things like self-actualization, self-esteem, etc. The
Mm-hmm.
crowd that we're dealing with are, people that are middle class, honest, very hardworking people that don't have a lot of money to throw around. So they're always looking out for, I need my son's life to be, daughter's life to be more secure than mine. They need to have this nice white collar job, etc. So their thoughts and ambitions are all very serious, right, in nature. And it's, you can't blame them, it's important. That's how my dad was, and that's what has gotten me here, right? So they place a lot of emphasis on education because in India people don't hold back on education. They'll be like, I will do everything in my power to make sure this child gets the best education so that he can at least move out of this, not such a great life where I'm struggling to make ends meet, etc. So these parents, they don't resonate with things like gamification, making things nice. They're not there. They are about, can you solve this problem for me? Will my child be able to speak good English so that they can get that job or do well in exam? Can they be good at academics? Things like that, right? And you can't blame them. You understand where they're coming from. So
Mm-hmm.
to this parent, if you simply say, I have this gamified product, it'll be fun, learning has to be fun, so let your kid use it, they will be like, my kid is needs to have a good life, it doesn't have time for all of these games. And they will, that's not how they want. You to tell them what is the learning outcome, how is it going to help my child's future, how likely is this to help my child's future, why is this important for my child's future. It's all about that, right? So that is something that we have understood, and this is something that we didn't understand today. We've been doing this for 2 years. So do you
Awesome.
know synthesis?
No.
So Elon Musk had the school, so he hated traditional schools, as you can guess, not a very traditional kind of a guy. So, so he said, my children are not going to these schools. These schools are not teaching the right things. They are making my kids, be very obedient people who will not be able to think out of the box. So he had a bunch of problems. As you can see, he's like a very great problem solver. So he'll have a very different way of what education is. I mean, view of what
Mm-hmm.
education is. So he said, I'm not going to send my children to those schools. I'm going to create a school inside SpaceX, and it's going to be different. So it is different. And they got this teacher named Josh Don, who ran the school. And that guy, once these kids sort of, he ran it for a few years, and it was different. It's like a school you walk in, and it's one of these dream schools where kids are doing random things, like, they maybe they're building something in. And one of the things that they were doing is, there'll be these games, which is more like life. Like in life, if you see, there's no laid out path, right? In school it was there, like after 10th, 11th, you'll go to 12th, then you go to college. So there is some structure to life until you are in school. But now, Sophie, I mean, you came to India. I'm pretty sure you're like consulting in a bunch of places. It's a path that
Mm.
you laid out for yourself, right? There's no set path. So these games were also sort of like that, where there's no set. They will not even tell you what the rules of the game are. You'll just be thrown into a game environment, and as you play the groom, your score will change, and the children will be like, oh my god, if you do this is what gives you positive score, if you do this is what gives you a negative score, we should strategize like this. So they form teams and get kids to do these activities. Do you understand
Mm.
what I'm saying? And
No.
this, he came out and spun it off as a totally new startup called Synthesis. You can look it up, and it was a crazy thing. Like a lot of uptake. They were always had more demand than they could serve, into tens of millions of dollars of revenue. And me being a problem solver, when I came into tech, I was naive enough to think I can take that and go to the market, right? So, I love the product still. So we used to do these small games. We used to teach probability by playing Settlers of Catan. You know Catan, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yes, yeah.
So kids will play Settlers of Catan, and in that we'll teach them probability. You know those dots on those Catan things,
Yep.
where like how likely is that particular number, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So those kinds of things we used to try. So that's when we started realizing the parent side of things. So from there we iterated and we said, okay, if you want to build this company, let's build it on something that a lot of people consider to be tangible and real and important, and that is English and math. That's how we pivoted there. So choose something that's headache for the parent, position it very seriously as a learning company, but back it with super strong gamification, because the same parent will come back to you and fight with you if the kid cries to do your assignment, right? If the kid does not want to use your app after buying, they'll feel
Yeah.
scammed. So
Yeah.
that's where you need all the gamification in the world, because the kid will not do something just because the parent bought it. It'll be like, I don't like it, and throw away your app if it's bad. So that's the balance that you have to strike. And there's a lot of things around distribution, etc. And it's a 2.5 year journey, but now we know how to strike a balance between these two stakeholders,
Mm, that's amazing,
right?
and I think that's what you're trying to solve here. That's why many haven't pursued further in education, because it was solving a problem on one side, exactly, where you have at the same time the stakeholder, the parents, what is the outcome they are waiting for, but also the children that need to use the education app, and if they don't, then it's failing, right, as a product. So all the learnings you've gathered are amazing, and within 2 year and a half, just really iterating and fast testing, prototyping, playtesting. And I can see that mindset even in the few conversations we've had, like that
Yeah,
fast testing and iterating.
yeah,
And I think that's the foundation of also your company, how you work, because you need to explore a lot,
yeah,
kill some assumptions, and actually deliver based on your findings, which is what
exactly.
Supernova is as a result. That's why when I again tested it, like, what is that alien product? And but in a very positive way, I was like, how did you come up with that? But now I understand also for the
Yeah,
iteration, and amazing work, by the way, from your team on
thank you
reaching
so
that
much.
point. Yeah, as you saw.
Yeah, I mean, long way to go, but we're happy to be here, of course. Yeah,
Yeah, and still, like, of course, like where to go, but like you said, you have a core product loop that has really worked with AI. And just quick facts here also for the listener. What has been your funding journey as well? Because as we've met at Lumikai, you've been also backed by Lumikai. As you started, did you bootstrap as well, or did you also
yeah.
receive initial funding? Yeah. What was your funding journey as well as you get into that big ambition?
So we knew we had to raise, like, we are second time founders, right? Like basically my co-founder scaled something with $15 million, sold it, etc. So we knew at some point we would take in funding. But again, we were also clear that if we take funding, it's years long journey. Only then you should take it if you're sure. So initially, for two reasons, we bootstrapped, right? One, we didn't have a lot of proof that we could do something in education, right? Like I said, my background, while education passion is there, I've been teaching. It's not something that I've done it for like tens of thousands of kids or maybe lakhs of kids at that point of time, right? Today we have, but at that point of time we didn't, right? So there was not a lot of trust or proof that we could do something here. And secondly, we also wanted to understand any market before you get in. I believe you should spend some time making it sort of like a part-time gig, where you can sort of understand, do I enjoy working here? Is this a right fit for me as a founder? Is this something that I want to spend my next 5-10 years doing, right? So for those two reasons, we bootstrapped initially. And that's when, because we are bootstrapped, we are not answerable to anyone, right? We could literally do whatever we want. So initially, I would say it's a super exploratory journey. Like imagine a bunch of me, Nawin, Anirudh, like all of my co-founders will go to class. 10 students would come, three teachers would be there, and we'll be teaching those kids probability with Catan. Next day we're playing maybe poker and we're teaching something about probability there, or maybe so many things, right? Or we built these things called coding games where there'll be games, but you have to write code to sort of make the character do stuff inside the game.
Mm.
So you're getting kids to learn coding, but it's there's a very immersive game around that. So super fast prototyping, not really caring about scale anything. Every week come up with something very novel, and then try to wow the kids. That's all the focus was, right? So by this time we had come up with crazy random things. Like if I show you this is education, you a lot of people are like, are you serious? Like this is something kids are learning from this, right? So by then we also understood about the market, etc. So we didn't have a we had this aspiration, this idea, etc., but nothing was solid. So that's when we met Lumikai, right? And these guys, unlike we are also meeting some traditional tech kind of VCs, etc., who didn't really care. Some did, I wouldn't say everybody, but some didn't really care that much about gamification, blah, who cares? Like, what is the business, right? That's all. They focus on, understandably so, right? That's how education works traditionally. But these guys were, they understood that what we were trying to do, they understood what it took to sort of create those experiences. And I think Lumika was able to spot that, these guys are very passionate and they're trying very novel things, so maybe we should back them. That's how it started. And they really listened to our vision, what we've done, etc. So at that point of time, I would still say there was a lot of risk in the business. And they took that risk, they took the leap of faith on us. And that went a long way, right? Because now you have a backer who believes in some of the core things that as much as you do, right? Always encouraging, always
Mm.
experimenting, encouraging you to experiment, etc. So then Lumika came in. As soon as Lumika came in, we raised about 1 million, right? And like you said, yeah, that's how it started. Yeah.
Hmm.
Today, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And how many are you, and what will it allow you with that extra funding? So, because I really love the fact that you decided intentionally to bootstrap. I think it's the right way, especially when you start to explore your product. You need the
yeah,
conviction for yourself first.
yeah,
It's a test for
yeah,
the co-founder team. Also,
yeah,
discovery journey that you can do for cheap, actually. I mean, it's your
yeah,
time. And then you don't have to respond to anyone to influence exactly your pace and what you are supposed to answer to. And until that time, then you can grow and scale to
exactly.
building and growing. So, what will it allow you with the funding you get from Lumikai on building next? What are your priorities? How are you expanding the product, maybe?
See, for us, we had to get a. So, if you know Vinod Khosla,
Mm-hmm.
he's one of, if you know him, he's a amazing investor and amazing entrepreneur as well. So he does this thing called Khosla Ventures. Might have heard of it, right? So we take a lot of his framework. So one of the things that he says is super important to have a very ambitious goal, like that's your Mount Everest, peak of Mount Everest. And it's also super important to, you don't get to Mount Everest by just straight walking up to the peak. You have to go sideways, zigzag, get to base camps, refill yourself, get some assets, and keep moving forward to reach the peak. It's not one straight line, right? So while our goal, not even exaggerating when I'm saying to build an AI tutor for every child, hopefully like millions, if not hundreds of millions of kids will someday be using it, right? So but you have to start somewhere. So our first base camp is, we wanted to build a business where we understood distribution, cash flows were coming, we are growing and monetizing, and the business is working out. I think what this capital allow us to do is, I think we can easily get to tens of thousands of kids learning via this platform with real learning outcomes, maybe a few $1 million in revenue, if not like tens of millions of dollars in revenue. We should be able to get to that just with this. And this is also like, because we've executed well, fortunately enough, we're getting a lot of inbound. So I think something might materialize in the next few months, where we'll get some more round of funding as well, more like just expand the tech and product and academics team, etc. So that's what it's allowed us to do. Where we'll continue to invest is make the brand stronger, invest on tech, product and academics talent, be very focused on retention and learning outcomes, and get that brand that people rave about, and a lot of people want to come in. And then the tech is there, it's will scale anyway. So that's the way we're looking at it.
Thanks. And again, very inspiring. And I love the analogy with the Mount Everest. It's right. Look up
Yeah,
to where you want to be, but be strategic, like step by step where you're starting, because you have to start from somewhere. It makes a lot of sense, by the way. English or math, those are the core materials that you
yeah,
useful in life. So, and you need
yeah,
to start from small enough to iterate your product to deliver really well, of a high
yeah.
value, and then you scale to whatever other materials. For the last minutes we have, I wanted to get into the specifics of the product because, of course, for the listeners, not everyone will have access to it unless they're subscribers or parents, or maybe they want actually to also do it for their kids. How could you break down the product and what it offers? You showed it to me, but maybe in a high level, because that's very interesting also how you approach exactly teaching English, which is not the classic way. And I give an example here. Let's say, for example, as an adult, I don't remember how I learned as a kid, but you have those modules, you have your everyday, you have your lessons, etc., a bit gamified in Duolingo or Busu. What is your
Yeah.
approach here and the different modules and segments you have in Supernova?
Sure. So we try to, help kids with six things, right? Reading fluency, speaking fluency, listening and comprehension capabilities, pronunciation, grammar, and confidence at last when they speak, right? Basically, these fundamentally, I'm saying I'll make them a good communicator. But if you break down what does that really mean, like being fluent really mean, right? Is these six things we target. So as soon as a kid comes in, so we do a baseline. These are things that we learn from Kumon. Like if you see how a Kumon works, as soon as you go, there's a test and they put you on a particular band. Similarly, we also put you, and then there's a learning journey that's very adaptive and individualized to, personalized to what it is that you are struggling with, what is it that you are strong with, etc. Right? So that's the first thing that happens. Now, in terms of the core product and pedagogy itself, see, the thing that's changed is, especially for language learning, if you think about it, how does most of the world learn language? What is the best way? Like, how do most of us learn languages?
Speaking, being also listening to it, being integrated in circles. I mean, I'm in
Yeah,
Germany. I just hear, I
yeah,
don't understand always what people tell me, but that's how I absorb a bit the languages even as an adult, right? Being surrounded by
yeah.
it.
Yeah, so basically, if you look at a classroom, right, it's very unnatural. It's a very unnatural way of picking up a language, right, where you are told the rules. I'm pretty sure all of us, all of us know one language at least, most of us, right, which is our mother tongue. And most of us won't know any grammar rules in our mother tongue. It'll be like we know we are, super fluent speakers in our mother tongue. But if you ask me what is a verb in my mother, I have no idea what it, like, I don't know any grammar rules, but I can speak well, right? Similarly with English, like even today while we teach kids with English, until I had gotten to the point where we were forced to teach, where I went through the theory, if you had asked me a few years back what's an adjective, I'll be like, I don't know, but I can speak. I didn't need to. I'm not making my sentences based on one adjective plus one subject. I don't know, it's not how people think, right? So first of all, that doesn't, it's very unnatural. And that is why I think, if you see, after semesters and semesters of learning a language, kids, people still can't speak, but they can read and write. So something similar is going on in India as well. So in India, there are these things called English medium schools. It's very unique. Like you won't find that in places like Korea, Japan, etc., because
Mm.
people learn in their mother tongue. In India, about 20-30% of the population actually learns every single subject via English. Despite that, means every day you're spending 6-7 hours, reading English, writing English, everything that you do is in English in your school. Despite that, kids can't speak English, right? So what does that tell you? Simply making them write, read, answer a bunch of grammar questions is not getting them anywhere when it comes to speaking. And the point of a language is to be able to speak and communicate, right? Not really just do a bunch of questions. So it's kind of ridiculous that way. So our thing is, first thing that we said is, every day they're going to speak, and it's going to be enabled by this AI, and we'll put them in random situations. So one day they have to talk with the app and sort of buy vegetables in a very role playish kind of a scenario. One day they're playing a game where they have to speak to play, like a 20 questions game. For example, we have that where you have to ask the AI, it'll have a secret identity in its head. And the way to play the game is, you have to ask it, okay, is this person from Finland, for example, randomly saying. So
Mhm.
you have to ask a bunch of questions to sort of get some clues to find this person. Or so every day you have to speak. And we are creating this scenario where you're not like unnaturally speaking, you're like trying to play a game and you're speaking as a byproduct, right? Or some days we just make you listen, watch a nice story, right, for a 20-minute story, and then you chat about it. It doesn't, like, the 20 minutes doesn't even feel like learning, but you are consuming 20 minutes of English content, trying to understand what's going on in the story. And when you see a new word and you see a picture, you make that connection instantly in your brain, like, okay, this is what a fawn is, it's the child of a deer, like things like that, right?
Mm.
So that's how that pedagogy is, where we are trying to make it education a byproduct, We are structuring these experiences where you're just trying to get through the experience, you're focused on the experience itself, but you're learning as a byproduct. That's a core rule, right? And then the AI, what it does is it can speak to you, it can understand what you're speaking, it can understand every word, what's your pronunciation, how off is it, right? So it's very intelligent. It can give you that feedback in natural language, and all of that data is available for the model to sort of understand you better and give you adaptive exercises. So that AI brings a lot again to the pedagogy. And lastly, these are kids. So things like gyms, badges, streaks, community events, contests, these are things that kids are super excited by, right? So, again, you use that for learning. So these three things, I would say, come together to make a very solid learning journey for a kid, where the kid, our initial vision of it shouldn't be as boring. I think maybe we are like 25-30% there. Long way to go, but,
Mm.
significantly better. Yeah.
And this is also very educative for me, remembering how I learned, right? Until we had the discussion, I never thought about it. And I was like, that's right. And it's so difficult to learn a language, but it's a lot of by practicing. And especially when you don't feel, ideally, that you're learning like effortly, with effort, that you learn. So the speaking part and what you showed me in the demo is amazing through the
Yeah.
game. It's a conversation that happen endlessly. Like,
Yeah.
you always have someone available, and as you open Supernova, to talk to you, right? Which is not
Yeah.
possible in real life because you need to go to a class or have someone available.
Yeah. Correct.
um
24/7 this AI is available to you, speaking, listening, giving you feedback, so you don't have to feel shy. It's infinitely patient, infinitely compassionate, and infinitely intelligent as well. So that is what is available to you 24/7, and with around all of these contexts. So that's how we are trying to think through this.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's an interesting part where AI, many of us want to believe that it cannot replace some presence of humans, but for the part of compassion, and teachers are human, right? And sometimes they just don't have the patience, or anyone teaching. And here
Yeah.
it's exactly guaranteed because it doesn't have any emotion to be not there listening and
Yeah.
patient. That's beautiful, actually.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, you can control exactly, like you can control everything about its personality, and at scales. We've never had something like this, since the beginning of our civilization, right? Like, this is the first time. It's magical, actually. If 1 year back, 1.5 years back, if you told me something like this was going to happen, I would have predicted maybe it's like 50 years away, right? That's how magical it is. Like, more you work with this, I think definitely there's going to be some things that are very human that humans do, but I think it can take up a lot of our things and just create that abundant resources that makes everybody a winner in some sense, because of all of this technological innovation, right? So, yeah.
Hmm. And my last question to close this conversation today, there's so much more I would love to ask, but that's for another time and not on the
Yeah.
podcast. Is there
Yeah.
something I didn't ask you that I should have asked? And future aspiration and outlook for you towards the end of the year or next year that you would like to share at last?
So, see, like, purely from, I think we want to be in a place where there are solid learning outcomes and retention, where the kids love to use the product. Right now, our M1 is about 95, M3 is about 75. Now that sounds good until you realize these are paying customers, so they have a lot of incentive, right? So we want to get to a place where the course completion rates are in the range of 90 plus. Only then we have, I think, this product you can claim that it's kind of working, and with a lot of customer love, where the kids don't think of it as a chore, but rather they're excited to come to the platform and learn. So that is one, on kids loving it and coming back again and engaging with the product. Now, very important. The second thing is, when they do engage, are they doing something meaningful, right? That is the second thing, where the learning outcomes are guaranteed. So I think by next year, we want to be in a place where our M6 is like 95, and there are very tangible learning outcomes that the kid and the parents are proud of. That would be one solid goal. And then right now we are at, we want to get to maybe a lakh is zero point 0.1 million kids on our platform learning, doing English. Maybe we launch math. We are looking into it right now, where there's somebody who's interacting with you. Like, there's an AI right next to you, and you're solving sums together. You're making mistake. It'll be like, hey,
Hmm.
no, you put an extra one there, take a look at it again, go back, can you think what is a mistake here? That kind of very a new kind of an experience we're trying to build. So we want to have our math product out, we want to have like a lakh kits on it, and revenue is a byproduct, but still it matters to the business. So maybe we'll be at like $5 to $10 million of revenue is where we want to be in a year from now,
Mm.
right? So those are some of the things
Sounds
that we
very
do.
exciting, and I follow
Yeah,
that closely for sure. And if you
yeah,
manage to build this for math, you're also innovating quite a lot, because this is again another way of building the product in interaction that
yeah.
hasn't been figured out. And seeing what you've done with English, I'm really looking forward to seeing this apply to math, for example.
Sure, Sophie. Yeah.
It was super inspiring, and I love so much how candid you were, and you put your heart into what you share today, and even like in what you're doing, and using your skills, your brain, every ounce of yourself, So it was very
Thank you so much.
inspiring, and thanks again for
Yeah.
joining.
All right. Thank you so much. See you, Sophie. Bye.